Remember, folks, 2 miles. 532 stairs. There's going to be portions of our cave tour today where you're looking down between your shoes more than 100 feet to the cave floor beneath you. There's going to be portions of our cave tour today that are extremely narrow. The narrowest portion of our cave tour is an area called Fat Man's Misery. It lasts from about this shelter right here to that one over there. And when I say that it's narrow, I'm not joking around, right? Well, I can show you. So the last time I was down in Fat Man's Misery, I took off my hat and I tried to set it down on the ground. Didn't fit. Okay, this is a very, very narrow area that we're going to be walking through. And when we're almost done with that Fat Man's Misery, the floor is going to come up about 3 feet, ceiling's going to stay the same height, and we're going to be crouch walking at about this level for a few feet from about this end of the shelter to that end before we emerge into what's called Great Relief Hall. So make sure that you're prepared for that before we go. Make sure that this is the tour that you signed up for, because in the unlikely event that something happens to one of us over the course of today's cave tour, whoever's coming in to help is going in through the same entrance that we're about to use, right? That means that it could take several hours for them to reach us. That's not me trying to scare you off or anything. Just want to make sure that you know before you go.
All right, folks, so feel free, come on in. We're going to gather on up right around here. You guys can kind of scooch over a little bit. We can really maximize our space as we're gathering on in. And folks, as we do kind of make our way on in here, you know, I know you're all itching to get down inside the cave. I am too, but there's something I want to show to you before we go underground. It's these really cool rocks I found. All this stuff up along the ridge line over there. Now, all that up there is a type of sedimentary rock called sandstone. It's kind of our secret ingredient here at Mammoth Cave. You know, once we're underground, we're not going to see any more of that sandstone. The only type of rock we'll see down there is a different type of sedimentary rock, something called limestone. Limestone is pretty much the best type of rock in the world if you want to use if you want to make a cave like Mammoth, because limestone is very soluble in water. When the rain falls out here in South Central Kentucky, falls down on top of our limestone, begins to dissolve away at it, erode it. Take it into solution just like sugar in a hot cup of coffee, till eventually it opens up a bowl-shaped depression in the earth called a sinkhole that draws that water down deeper underground. Underground, those small rivulets of water meet up with each other to become underground streams. Those underground streams flow into each other to become underground rivers, all of which flow eventually to the Green River, where all the water in this region wants to go, carving out these big, wide-open passageways as it moves along to make that journey a little bit more efficient. But of course, folks, rain's not just falling on top of our sinkholes out here. It's falling down on top of the cave itself, too. And anywhere else in the world, it would be dissolving away at the limestone from above there, dragging it down into those big open chambers, forming the sort of stalactites and stalagmites, the kind of cave formations you might expect to see while we're underground. But I got to tell you right now, folks, that doesn't really happen here at Mammoth Cave. And it's all thanks to that sandstone. Because the big difference between limestone and sandstone is that where limestone dissolves real easily in water, sandstone is relatively resistant to it. So when rain falls on top of the Mammoth Cave, it basically hits the roof, right? It rolls off the side. Makes its way down in through those sinkholes to the lowest levels of the cave system where our underground rivers still flow today, and leaving behind these great big open chambers totally dry, totally undecorated, and unfilled in by growing cave formations. Because even as slowly as a stalactite or a stalagmite grows, on average about an inch every 300 to 500 years, over enough time they will very gradually fill in space, cutting off portions of the cave from other portions. So it's a really unique type of cave system we're about to see. I'm excited to share it with you. But before we go, there is a few more pieces of safety information you should be aware of. So in case you weren't already aware, you know, once we're down there, the trail is going to be dimly lit. Ceilings are going to be low. Walls are going to be tight. Ground's going to be uneven and wet. So do make sure you watch your head and step while we're together today. But please make sure that you remain on the trail the entire time that we're down there. That means don't touch anything, don't climb on anything, don't sit on anything that isn't a chair, don't litter or write your name on the wall, or remove anything from the cave, or run your fingers along the ceiling, or anything at all like that. We want to leave this place just the way that we find it today. Now we're going to be moving as one big group while we're underground. That's for safety's sake, so I'll tell you something about moving as a big group. If you want a slower, steadier pace, you want to stay at the front with me. Now folks, I love being inside the cave. I'm going to be down there, I'm going to be taking my time, right? I'm going to be drinking in the atmosphere. I'm going to be getting paid by the hour to get cave tours. It's going to take a long time. But everybody who's stopping to take photos and stuff is going to be rushing to catch up. So if you want that slower, steadier pace, if you want more time to rest when we do stop, try and stay at the front with me. And anybody here under the age of 16, make sure you stay within arm's reach of whoever brought you here today. You know, we're only allowed to lose about 10 people a year, folks, and we've already lost one. So I really need your help today to keep these numbers down. So while we're down there, please, like I said, no littering, no flash photography either. Having those flashing lights going off down inside the cave can really bother other people on the tour, can trigger medical problems in extreme cases. So take a second now, turn the flash off on your phone, and if you do need a flashlight to see by, make sure it stays pointed at you. Now the last thing I got to tell you about, it has to do with our bats here at Mammoth Cave. Now we have over a dozen different species of bats here on the park, and a lot of them, pretty famously, make their home down inside the cave system one way or another. So there is always a chance, folks, there's always a chance that we might see a bat over the course of today's cave tour. Now, if you do get lucky enough to see one of those bats, please make sure that seeing is the only thing you do with it, all right? Do not touch, taste, or smell the bat. Just look at it. If something goes wrong and the bat touches you, please tell myself or Ranger Lucas as soon as you're done screaming. So I have more information that I have to share with you. And the last thing is, there is a fungal disease inside Mammoth Cave called white nose syndrome. White nose only affects the bats. Doesn't affect us or our pets, but we don't want it to get out of the cage. So when we're done, we're going to be walking across those soap and water mats behind you there. It rinses the spores of that fungal disease off your shoes. So questions, comments, or concerns about any of that stuff? All right, well in that case, folks, make sure you have your tickets out and ready to show to Ranger Lucas. If you're here with a group of people, make sure that you stay with your group of people while you're showing those tickets off, and I'll see you guys down inside the cave.
You might get a little wet, but I think we'll be okay.
Longest known cave system on the planet Earth, at over 426 miles discovered so far. We're currently standing an estimated 150 feet deep right now, directly underneath that train that you might have seen as you made your way toward the visitor center today. We're pretty much right underneath that right now. And as we make our way on in here, take in the space a little bit, I don't mean to burst your bubble this early, folks, but we are far from the first people to ever make our way down here. Very first people to ever do that were late Archaic and early Woodland period Native Americans, making their way in through the same entrance that we just used, seeing these same huge rooms, these same sprawling avenues, but by a very different light source, a torch, made out of the same kind of river cane that grows on the banks of the Green River today. That they would cut and dry, bundle together, set alight, those torches burning for just about 45 minutes at a time down here in the dark, with about as brightly as one single candle. And yet those prehistoric people used nothing but those meager tools to explore almost 20 miles of the Mammoth Cave system, making them the most prolific cave explorers anywhere on Earth at that time period. There is nowhere else that human beings explored more cave than they did right here. And as they made their way down here, folks, well, they might have been feeling some of the same things that we're feeling right now. Having that very natural sense of curiosity, that human desire to know more about what lies in a massive subterranean space like this. But at least that much, folks, is just speculation. Those prehistoric people never left behind any written records that we can understand, so of course we don't know for sure exactly what they thought about this place, bless you. The first written records of the Mammoth Cave, the modern ones, come from the late 1790s, when settlers began arriving in this area from the East Coast. Now, a lot of those settlers were veterans of the Revolutionary War. You see, after the Revolution, we had our political freedom in the United States, but what we did not have was a lot of cash, right? And the cash that we did have, well, wasn't worth very much. So instead of paying veterans of that war with cash, the first Congress of the United States decided to pay them in land grants out here on the frontier, what was known at the time as Kentucky County, Virginia. So folks, you can imagine being one of these first settlers, right? You just fought through the whole Revolution, maybe you camped out with George Washington at Valley Forge, you received this piece of property out here in the Wild West. You make a journey of over 400 miles to arrive here, crossing the Cumberland Gap, following in the wake of people like Daniel Boone to arrive here, at this piece of property that was given to you by George Washington himself, just to find out it's got a big hole in it. Well, that's actually pretty good news for these settlers, because they knew that dry caves and rock shelters like this one have a lot of dirt inside of them, dirt that can be turned into something called saltpeter. Now, does anybody know what we use saltpeter for? Gunpowder, that's exactly right. It's the primary ingredient in black gunpowder, something that was pretty necessary out here in the West. So when saltpeter extraction began inside Mammoth Cave, it started out pretty small scale, right? Folks taking out what they needed for themselves, maybe for their neighbors. Most of the saltpeter that was being used by the Army was arriving in this country from overseas. It was coming in from India. Even today, best saltpeter in the world. It all comes from India. But the thing about India at that time is that India was a colony of the British Empire, just like we used to be. And the British Empire was at war with the French Empire. So when we young Americans tried to trade with the British, we'd be attacked by the French, right? When we tried to trade with the French, we'd be attacked by the British. And so in an effort to keep us out of this global conflict, what are known as the Napoleonic Wars, the government of President Thomas Jefferson signed into law the Embargo Act of 1807, ceasing all trade between the United States and foreign nations. So what does that mean for Mammoth Cave? Well, supply of that saltpeter is down, right? And demand for it, especially as we get tangled up into those wars starting in the year 1812, well, demand is way up. Now, folks, I'll be honest with you, this is the first one of these I've done in a while, and I'm just having some trouble remembering the name of the war that happened in 1812.
The War of 1812.
Anybody can help me out? Which war happened in 1812?
The War of 1812.
Well, I heard somebody say it, War of 1812. That's exactly right. So, War of 1812 is underway. We really ramp up production down here inside Mammoth Cave. We lease about 70 enslaved men from surrounding states, bring them down here inside the cave to begin work that continues 24 hours a day, 7 days a week in 2 12-hour shifts. These young enslaved Africans and African Americans were down here with one job to do, filling up some big wooden boxes with dirt. You might have seen some of those boxes on our way in. You'll see some more as we make our way out. Once that box was filled to the top with dirt, water would be pumped in from the surface through these wooden pipes right here, poured over top of that dirt, at which point the box would begin to act like a coffee maker. The water percolating down through the dirt over the course of about 6 days, producing at the bottom a very nitrate-rich solution called niter beer that would then get pumped back to the surface, boiled, filtered, and dried, mixed with a few other ingredients to make saltpeter for use on the front lines of the war. Folks, over the course of the War of 1812, we produced 400,000 pounds of saltpeter here at Mammoth Cave. We went through 22 million of those boxes of dirt. And these are big numbers, right? But maybe they're a little bit abstract. So I can just show you what I mean. So if you folks take a look at this line on the wall right here, that is the original cave floor. All the dirt that used to exist here was shoveled out as part of that saltpeter mining operation. And this big hill we're about to walk up, well, folks, that is a man-made hill. Because just like a coffee machine, you had to shovel the box out before you were able to use it again. That's their product. That's a processed dirt. This was an industrial-scale operation happening right here in the early 1800s. But of course, folks, just like all wars do, War of 1812 came to an end. Came to an end in the year 1815. Supply of that saltpeter was up, demand for it was down. The price of the stuff coming out of Mammoth Cave goes from $1 a pound to just 5 cents. Mammoth Cave goes bust. No more money to be made down here. So cave owners had to find a different way to make money using the cave, and they had kind of a strange idea. They thought that maybe they could convince people from all over the country, all over the world really, to make their way out here to the middle of nowhere, south central Kentucky, check into a very nice hotel, and then pay good hard-earned money to follow 2 complete strangers down into the biggest hole in the ground that we could find. Kind of a strange concept, but it's been working pretty well for us for the last couple of 100 years. So as we walk a little bit farther, we'll talk more about those early days of tourism. I'll remind you folks that if you want a slower pace, head on up to the front of the group here so I can set my own pace by that, and I will talk to you folks again here in just a couple of minutes. So come on in, folks, come on in. We're going to kind of gather on up right around here. And as we make our way on into this room here, well, let's go back. Let's go back to that year, 1816, very first year of tourism here at Mammoth Cave. Back in 1816, people were beginning to make their way out here, coming to see this massive underground space. And that left cave owners with a new question to answer. People are coming to see the cave, that's fantastic, but what are we going to show them? Well, folks, that's when they turned back to those young enslaved saltpeter miners, because those young men, they were down here with one job to do, right? A very dirty, dusty, dangerous, and miserable job. But being curious and explorative human beings, that is not all that they did down here. They began to take a look around, see what there is to see in a massive subterranean space like this. Maybe one of them would notice an interesting side passage, like that one, right there. Make their way down it, discover the edge of the bottomless pit. A pit so deep you could drop a rock down it, you'd never hear it hit the bottom. Now that's the kind of thing people pay good money to see, right? Maybe they were walking along, find something on the ground, pick it up thinking it's a piece of trash, discover instead an artifact left behind by those prehistoric Native Americans. Maybe the stub of one of their river cane torches. Maybe a piece of their clothing or a woven moccasin. Maybe a freshwater mussel shell or a gourd bowl. Tools that those prehistoric people used during their own mining operations down here in the cave, scraping this mineral, gypsum, off the walls. It's that dark mineral growing on the limestone rock here. Now, in its natural form, this gypsum is a very pure white color, but it has been stained dark by the soot of torches and lanterns over the course of the last few thousand years. And if you take a look down near shoulder level, you'll notice that it's all been scraped away, evidence of that prehistoric activity down inside the cave. So that's what people were coming to see, right? But who was making their way out to see it? Well, it was anybody who could spare 2 or 3 weeks out of their busy schedule, come out here to the countryside, check into a very, very nice hotel up on the surface, you know, soft beds and feather pillows, big greasy meals waiting for you whenever you wanted them, and then coming down here on cave tours with never more than about a dozen people at a time. So what kind of people you figure we're talking about here, folks? Yeah, rich people, right? We're talking about rich people. We're talking about doctors and lawyers. We're talking about diplomats. We're talking about famous artists and musicians, all coming here to experience this same place that we're seeing right now. Now, folks, I can tell just by looking at you that our clientele has not changed since then. So I want to give you the same option that they had back in the day. You can take the short tour or you can take the long tour. Who here wants to take the short tour? What about that long tour? Any take a long tour? Yeah, a couple more people. Well, I got to say, you folks are a lot braver than I am. That long tour was about 12 to 14 hours down here inside the cave. Short tour was only about 6 to 8 hours, a little bit easier on you. Not walking along nice developed trails like this, of course, but clambering over big piles of rock like the stuff that I'm standing on. And doing it all by the light of a lantern, just like this one. Now, folks, these rich people, they were not down here by themselves. They were led down here by guides. And just like a lot of labor in the American South at that time, we turned for those guides to more enslaved men. In particular, a young man named Stephen Bishop, who was brought here at the age of about 17. Now, when Stephen arrived here, he was not given an option about giving the cave tours, right? He was handed a lantern on his first day, told to go learn the route, because tomorrow you start leading people down. But Stephen found, once he was down inside the cave, well, he really began to fall in love with what he saw. And he began to follow his curiosity farther and deeper than any person had ever gone before. In 1838, Stephen Bishop became the very first person to cross the bottomless pit. Up to that point, they'd walk you up to the edge of it, they might let you toss a rock down or something like that, and they'd turn you around and they'd bring you back up here. That is till Stephen went down there with a 25-foot ladder that he threw from one end of the pit to the other, put his lantern in his teeth, and then crawled to the far side. On the far side, he discovered a pair of underground rivers, the River Styx and the Echo River, 2 rivers that he named. And Stephen, dipping his hand into the water, felt that it was too cold to swim across, but he was not deterred. He went back to the surface, he got himself some lumber, dragged it down the inside the cave, and by the light of this lantern, he built a boat and sailed to the far side of those 2 rivers, discovering miles more cave passageways over there. And so in 1842, when it came time to draw a new map of the Mammoth Cave because of everything that Stephen had found, well, who did they get to do it but Stephen Bishop himself, who drew the entire thing from memory up in Louisville, about an hour-and-a-half drive today, closer to a 2-day journey back in those days, drawing the entire map from memory. Now, by today's standards, it's only about 80% accurate. You know, the cardinal directions don't always line up. The distances aren't always quite right, but every left is a left, every right is a right. And hundreds of people made their way safely through these passageways using nothing but Stephen's recollection of this place.
Got that much clearance?
I do. It's not a lot. Oh, we're going even deeper. Oh, wow. Imagine this with just a lantern. Just a lantern. And you're like, where does it go? And there's none of this. You're just stumbling over rocks. Oh my gosh. You don't know where you're going, when it's going to drop away to an endless pit. Oh my goodness. Then the other way. There you go. Gotta catch up, babe.
Man, it just run off and leave you, don't it?
Well, I mean, you'll stop eventually. Where did they go?
Oh, you're on your own.
Good luck.
Wet. Sweet.
Yeah, it's wet down here.
We are in Fat Man's Misery in Mammoth Cave National Park. Okay. You making it okay there?
Hey. Hey, I'm fitting through here just fine.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I'm not a fat man.
Yeah, you're not a me. Tip. If you're coming to Mammoth Cave National Park here in Kentucky, leave your coat in the car. Don't matter if it's like 0 degrees outside, because it's not cold down here. It's not hot,
No, it's comfortable.
but it's a good workout.
You're going
And
to be climbing. You're going to be
yeah, shrinking.
put you on some comfortable
Good,
clothes.
yeah, comfortable time. Yes. Yeah, you're gonna break a sweat, so yeah, just a tip.
We are currently at our deepest point today, folks. We are 310 feet below the surface of the earth at this point. We have crossed the bottomless pit 105 feet from top to bottom. We've made it through Fat Man's Misery, and now we are, of course, the lowest that we're going to get today, physically and emotionally. Now, up ahead, we have what's been described by that great cave explorer, Stephen Bishop, as the crown jewel of the Mammoth Cave. A massive 170-foot tall vertical shaft called the Mammoth Dome. And folks, I gotta tell you, it is stunning. It is absolutely beautiful, but it is simply not gonna take your breath away. What's going to do that is what is directly behind you when you're looking at Mammoth Dome, a 155-step stair tower that we're all going to have to climb together. And I think you'll agree when we get to the top, it is the most breathtaking portion of our tour. So make sure that you're prepared for that. If you want a little bit of extra time on those stairs, I'll invite you on up to the front of the group now. But as long as everybody's ready, we're going to get rolling.
Ready to go?
Yeah. Okay. What if you had loss of power? Are these on a generator? These
There
lights?
is a generator.
Okay.
And if we lose the generator,
You've got a
yeah,
flashlight.
Okay.
For all of us. For how many people do we have in this?
Probably 100.
But I have the utmost faith. I will say this. This freaks people out sometimes. But I have had the power go out on cave.
Oh, well.
And I'll tell you, the first
Freak people
thing
out.
everybody did was they took out their cell phone
They
and
turn the
turned on
flashlight on. Everybody's got a flashlight now,
Oh, yeah.
nowadays. It's probably brighter with everybody's phones on than it would be with
Oh,
all
yeah.
these lights.
So I for one am not terribly worried about that.
Yeah. Yeah, because it is absolute darkness.
Oh, yeah.
That we all have.
Cords. Some shoes.
Moccasins.
Gotta have to walk across all these rocks.
Oh wow, and those were thin. Imagine all these sharp rocks.
We got cushion shoes.
Yeah. Nice shells.
We're celebrating a pretty important anniversary here at Mammoth Cave. 100 years ago, a young man named Floyd Collins was trapped inside another cave on the park property, a place called Sand Cave. At this moment, 100 years ago, he has been stuck underground for over 48 hours with a 27-pound rock pinning his left ankle in place. Over the course of the next 13 days that he spends trapped inside Sand Cave, rescue efforts will change the fate, will become a national news sensation, and they'll change the face of this region forever. If you want to know more about that story, I encourage you to check out our free museum in the visitor center, go take a hike on the Sand Cave Trail, learn a little bit about another important part of our history. But here at the end, folks, I want to say on behalf of myself and Ranger Lucas, thanks a lot for joining us. We're going to make our way back outside now, see if the sun's still shining.
Babe, what did you think?
I loved it. Watch your hands. Getting a little narrow again. That was great. That was so fun. Definitely, I recommend it. 10 out of 10.
Yeah, this was the historic tour here at Mammoth Cave National Park here in western Kentucky.
Yeah, it's not too hard. It's not too strenuous. I mean, if you're able to climb stairs, if you're able to crouch, if you're able to squeeze through narrow passages, this is the perfect tour for you.
It was really cold outside, like 40 degrees outside, so we wore jackets in here. But the deeper you go down, the warmer it gets. So I broke a sweat.
Yeah.
I had to tie my jacket around my waist. I had to take it off. But I would, no matter how cold it is outside, just leave your jacket behind. You won't need it once you get down here.
Wear a t-shirt and a hoodie, you'll be great.
Yeah. Yeah, this is about a 2-hour tour. And there was like 3 tours today. I don't know if we're going to do another one, but they have like, I would say, close to 20 tours. I know they have over 10.
In the peak time, like
In summertime, they have
yeah.
a bunch. It's like 426 miles of cave, and longest cave system in the world. You won't find anything this size anywhere on the planet. So that's why we had to come here. Awesome. All right, well, I'll do it.
on the stone over millions of years.
We know now that a lot of our assumptions are correct.
After several days of working and digging, he found a rather large cave, indeed, where a goblin. So he had a document drawn up, which is as follows: to give him half interest in any cave found on the property. He approached B. Doyle and two other farmers who owned part of the upland ridge closer to Cave City, entered into an agreement, similar to the agreement with his father, to explore caves on that property and see if he could find a cave, and if so, he would split the profits with the owners of lands over the cave.
Floyd's new partners provided a room report while he began his search for a place called Sand Cave. Situated in Barron County, the highway to Mammoth Cave, Sand Cave was accessible to tourists. Could be a money maker, but it wouldn't be easy. The avenue he discovered was a narrow, twisting fissure angling downward from breakdown and loose rocks. Excited about the prospect of success, he shared his findings with his family.
And he told them that same cave, he said, I think I found a pretty cave. I'm going to do some more exploring in that. Of course, Dad warned him then, and Dad, I love to warn him about, going in caves. And it was dangerous.
Despite Floyd's optimism, partners expressed concern locations of slow progress.
Sort of near the end of the 2-week period, the farmers were getting anxious that Floyd was going to eat them out of house at home without finding anything, and he produced one day several small stalactites as an indication that he felt he was going to get through. He had set off a dynamite blast in an obstacle, which he felt might be the final obstacle to getting into the larger cave. This was early in the week. He waited a couple of days for the fumes to clear.
Last year, after 34 years, returned to the same pit, propelled in it. After some desperate slogging through appalling mud conditions, we connected into this stream passage which ultimately led to this pretty pothole canyon with waterfalls, fish, crayfish, and even some ancient bear bones.
As of 2011, Mammoth Cave's known length is 390 miles and expanding.
Part of what's exciting about this cave is that it does never end. Every time you come back, there's something new to find and a different kind of cave on every kind of trip.
The cave survey team continues. There are more passageways to explore and more miles to put on the map.
When you're in newly discovered passages and you don't know what's going to happen next, you just feel very powerfully alive.